Welcome to Crime Ciphers, where secrets hide in plain sight and every mystery demands a master decoder. Dive deep into the labyrinth of twisted minds, uncover chilling tales that haunt the shadows, and join our community of relentless truth seekers. We crack codes others can't, solve puzzles that baffle investigators, and expose the darkness lurking beneath perfect facades. Don't just watch. Become the ultimate cipher solver. Subscribe now, smash that notification bell, and never miss a cryptic clue. Your next mind-bending journey into crime's deepest mysteries starts here. Ready to decode the unthinkable? Let's move to our first story. And this one begins beneath the amber glow of an autumn moon, where a young girl vanished into the whispering woods, leaving a town haunted by secrets. In the sleepy town of Oak Ridge, the peace was ruptured one cool October night when the body of 14-year-old Emily was discovered in the woods behind her home. The news ricocheted through every street, every kitchen, every heart. Oak Ridge was the kind of place where doors went unlocked, neighbors brought pies after tragedy, and secrets lived quietly beneath friendly smiles. Now, those secrets shifted in the shadows, awakened by fear. Emily was shy, bright, kind. But lately she'd been distant. She'd stopped showing up to math club. Teachers whispered, worried about her heavy silences and distracted answers. At home, stress was rising. Emily's parents, Sarah and Michael, had separated months ago. Sarah supported their children on a waitress's wage, pulling double shifts while Michael searched for a job in towns farther away. Emily had become an anchor for her little brother, making dinner, walking him to the bus stop, and holding the thin frame of their family together. That evening, Sarah finished late at the diner. She called home, but there was no answer. At first, she worried Emily had left her phone on silent again. By 10, panic settled in. The house was empty, dinner untouched, her son asleep downstairs. She called the police, and within hours, the woods behind their house were dotted with flashlights and voices calling Emily's name. The search party moved slowly, scanning for any sign, until Sheriff James stopped and knelt next to something in the brush. A faded sweater Emily wore every week. The medical examiner revealed Emily had died from blunt force trauma. But there were signs of struggle. Defensive wounds on her hands, dirt under her nails, scattered pine needles caught in her hair. The crime scene suggested she hadn't simply wandered into danger. She'd been taken, fought, and moved after death. Interviews with neighbors began the next morning. People remembered seeing Emily taking her brother to school alone, buying groceries for the house, sometimes looking lost, always sweet when spoken to. But Mrs. Ford, who lived across the street, mentioned arguing voices the night before. She couldn't say who'd been involved. Only that she'd heard shouting from Emily's backyard, long after the quiet usually settled in. Deputies went through her phone, finding not just messages from friends, but also anonymous texts. They were cruel, filled with threats and bullying remarks. The messages painted a picture of a recent falling out at school. Emily's classmates were interviewed, and slowly a story emerged. Emily had been pushed out of her old friend group. She was accused of revealing a secret, though no one could confirm what it was. Some girls admitted sending harsh texts, but denied seeing her after the last day she came to school. Sheriff James focused his attention on the woods themselves. The crime scene team discovered a second set of footprints, larger than Emily's, and a piece of torn fabric, a part of a jacket, dark green, muddy, snagged on a branch. They canvassed local shops and found someone had recently bought a green jacket at a thrift store. The clerk remembered the sale, confirmed the buyer was Margaret, Sarah's estranged sister. Margaret's relationship with the family had soured over disputes about the inheritance of the grandmother's property. Months earlier, she had accused Sarah of forging documents. The two hadn't spoken since, but Margaret still lived in town, working as a teller at Oak Ridge Bank. When questioned, Margaret claimed she hadn't left her home all evening, that she'd spent the night watching television. Her son Thomas confirmed her story, though he hesitated when pressed about the timeline. Forensic teams found a fiber on Emily's sweater, a distinct wool blend matching the lining of Margaret's green thrift store jacket. When the jacket was brought in for evidence, a portion of the sleeve was torn away. Margaret insisted she had ripped it weeks earlier, though shop security cameras placed her in the woods near Emily's street just hours before Emily went missing. The case seemed to be closing around Margaret, but Oak Ridge was divided. Some neighbors couldn't believe Margaret was capable of murder. They gathered on her porch, bringing food and comfort, certain the police had made a mistake. Margaret's colleagues described her as hard-working, sometimes temperamental about money, but devoted to her family. Others whispered about her past rage, her explosive arguments with Sarah, her bitter resentment about the property dispute that left her nearly bankrupt. Meanwhile, Sarah struggled under the weight of grief. She sat every day by the window, watching leaves drift past, remembering the years before everything changed. Emily's brother became withdrawn, barely speaking at school. As the investigation continued, Sheriff James went back through Margaret's financial records. A suspicious transfer had taken place days before Emily's disappearance, with thousands of dollars disappearing from their grandmother's care account. Emily's phone records suggested she had planned to confront Margaret about missing funds. Margaret denied the accusation, insisting Sarah was trying to frame her. Oak Ridge's small police force coordinated with state detectives to gather more evidence. The crime lab isolated DNA from under Emily's fingernails. It was a partial match to Margaret, but not conclusive. Too degraded to prove without a doubt. Still, it added pressure. The footprint in the woods matched Margaret's boots, but as defense lawyers argued, dozens of women in Oak Ridge owned the same style. Townspeople debated the case in every public gathering. The church held vigils for Emily. Lawyers began preparing for trial as media interest grew. Reporters from neighboring cities came to Oak Ridge, writing about the Whispering Woods murder. 6 months after the crime, the case reached the courtroom. The prosecution presented a narrative built on detective work, DNA, fiber evidence, and motive. They described how Margaret, angry over Emily's discovery of financial wrongdoing, confronted her in the backyard, lost control, struck her, and moved the body to the woods in a panic. Witnesses recalled shouting, Margaret's bitter anger, her financial desperation. The torn green jacket and wool fiber provided the prosecution's strongest physical evidence. The defense fought back. Margaret was portrayed as a scapegoat, chosen because of her recent arguments. Her lawyer, Rebecca, challenged the quality of the forensic evidence, questioning the reliability of DNA and memory. She argued that Emily's bullying at school could have led her into the woods, perhaps chased or targeted by other teens. Rebecca called classmates to the stand, some of whom admitted sending threats and harassing Emily, but denied violence. Judge Ann, sharp and methodical, focused testimony on facts, not emotion. The jury listened to days of forensic explanation, tearful testimony, tense cross-examination. Sarah spoke quietly about her daughter's struggles, about the late-night calls and her fears for Emily's safety. Margaret broke down in court, denying guilt, speaking of her love for Emily, insisting she would never hurt her. Closing arguments replayed the core mystery: fiber, footprints, motive, possibility of another suspect. Margaret's financial troubles and previous rage were weighed against uncertain scientific evidence and the alternative theory of bullying escalating into violence. After 4 days, the jury returned its verdict: guilty of second-degree murder. Margaret was sentenced to 25 years to life. After the verdict, Oak Ridge began to change. The churches held vigils not just for Emily, but for families torn apart by anger and grief. The local school increased counseling for students, hoping to end cycles of bullying. Emily's family, forever marked by tragedy, withdrew from public life. Her brother was given extra support at school. Sarah found work in a nearby town, trying to create stability. As winter passed, Oak Ridge tried to heal. The swing in the town park where Emily used to read was never empty. Flowers appeared every week, placed quietly by friends and strangers. The woods that once seemed peaceful now held a memory no one could forget. The Whispering Woods case came to stand for more than just one crime. It became a warning about ignored pain, the dangers of unresolved family conflict, the silent wounds of bullying and economic hardship. Oak Ridge learned that darkness can hide in any home, behind any face, in any town. The case is studied in criminology classes for its blend of forensic detail, psychological complexity, and the chilling reality that desperate choices sometimes follow desperate secrets. Emily's story, the girl who vanished into the whispering woods beneath the moon, is held close by those who knew her and remembered by those who never will. Let's move to our second story. And this one begins on a foggy September evening in a small town in Oregon, where the disappearance of a promising young woman ignited fears nobody saw coming. In the quaint community of Willow Creek, nestled among towering pines and mist-covered hills, 25-year-old Rachel vanished without a trace. A graduate student at the nearby university, Rachel was known for her vibrant spirit, academic brilliance, and passion for wildlife conservation. Her sudden disappearance in late September 2024 sent shockwaves through the town, unraveling secrets hidden beneath its serene facade. Rachel lived alone in a converted cabin on the edge of the forest, a place she chose for solitude and inspiration. She was last seen leaving a late-night study session at campus library, her destination unknown. Concern grew when she missed a scheduled video seminar the next morning, prompting friends to alert local authorities who immediately recognized the severity of the situation. Sheriff Blake took charge of the investigation, his decades of experience in rural law enforcement guiding every strategic decision. Early efforts focused on meticulously retracing Rachel's last known movements through the small college town. Surveillance footage from the university parking lot showed her walking alone toward her vehicle, pausing to gaze into the dense tree line she loved so much. Witnesses recalled seeing an unfamiliar black pickup truck idling nearby under the dim streetlights, but unfortunately no license plate number was captured on camera. Search and rescue teams combed the surrounding wilderness for days, navigating steep ravines and dense underbrush that made visibility extremely challenging. Specially trained canine units picked up faint scent traces, but frustratingly lost the trail near an abandoned logging site that had been dormant for several years. Efforts quickly intensified with aerial drone surveillance and direct collaboration with state police forensic experts, who brought advanced equipment to the remote location. Rachel's personal life revealed few immediate clues to investigators. She had no known enemies or threatening encounters, But recent email correspondence indicated growing stress from her environmental thesis work and increasingly strained relations with her academic advisor. Journal entries discovered in her secluded cabin portrayed a young woman wrestling with professional fear and personal uncertainty, but remaining resolute to finish her groundbreaking research on local industrial pollution affecting wildlife habitats. Detectives soon discovered that Rachel had been secretly meeting with an unknown individual during the weeks prior to her mysterious disappearance. Phone records led investigators to a local handyman named Lucas, whose sporadic appearances in town employment records seemed suspicious and inconsistent. Extended interviews with Lucas proved deliberately evasive. He admitted to knowing Rachel professionally, but vehemently denied any involvement whatsoever in her disappearance. A significant breakthrough arrived several weeks later when an experienced hiker stumbled upon a small, hastily abandoned campsite deep within the forest preserve. Among the scattered belongings were Rachel's distinctive hiking boots, a torn research notebook, and a partially burnt photograph showing her smiling alongside an unidentified man. Comprehensive forensic analysis definitively confirmed these items belonged to Rachel, placing her in this remote area several days after her last confirmed sighting on the university campus. Local media coverage heightened public intrigue and community concern significantly. Regional news outlets featured emotional community vigils and desperate appeals for information from anyone who might have seen something unusual. Social media platforms exploded with countless theories, ranging from calculated foul play by a dangerous stalker to an accidental death being systematically covered up by unknown parties. Family members consistently described Rachel as vivacious, caring, and mentally stable, completely dismissing any suggestions of self-harm or voluntary disappearance. However, an anonymous source within the university administration quietly hinted at a secret academic rivalry fueled by professional jealousy and intense competition that could have escalated unexpectedly into something far more dangerous than anyone anticipated. Sheriff Blake maintained a cautious, yet determinedly hopeful public stance throughout the lengthy investigation process. He repeatedly emphasized to worried community members that every possible lead was being pursued with complete dedication and that his department owed it to Rachel and her grieving family to find concrete answers, regardless of how long the process might require. Several months passed without any conclusive resolution to the baffling case. The investigation began its inevitable transition toward cold case status, but remained technically active, continuously monitored by dedicated officers who absolutely refused to abandon hope for Rachel's safe return or at minimum definitive closure for her family. Finally, unexpected forensic breakthroughs emerged when advanced DNA analysis found on recovered fabric evidence eliminated Lucas entirely, but pointed directly toward a local logging contractor named Harold, who maintained a well-documented history of volatile disputes with university personnel over contentious land use issues and environmental regulations. An arrest warrant was immediately issued for Harold. However, he managed to flee the area before authorities could successfully apprehend him, leaving behind only cryptic, handwritten notes suggesting deep personal regret. Mounting public pressure intensified as the tight-knit community rallied together, demanding swift justice for Rachel and refusing to let her case fade into bureaucratic obscurity. Specialized task forces coordinated extensive border checks, while organized manhunts systematically spanned rural highways throughout the entire Pacific Northwest region. The case gradually became a powerful symbol of determination for a small town that absolutely refused to let one of their beloved own be forgotten. Additional witnesses began courageously coming forward, providing crucial testimony describing Harold's distinctive pickup truck near the remote logging site on the exact night Rachel disappeared. This eyewitness testimony directly corroborated existing forensic data and significantly strengthened the prosecutorial case against him. Over the following year, Harold was finally captured in a neighboring state after a dangerous, hours-long standoff with federal marshals and subsequently extradited back to Oregon to face serious murder charges for Rachel's death. The comprehensive investigation gradually revealed increasingly complex layers that shocked even experienced investigators. Sheriff Blake and his dedicated team discovered threatening messages from an unknown contact explicitly warning Rachel to immediately stop her environmental research and maintain complete silence about certain disturbing findings related to systematic industrial pollution that she had been meticulously studying. This chilling revelation added an entirely new dimension to the case, suggesting that her disappearance might have been connected not only to personal conflicts, but to something significantly larger and more sinister involving corporate interests. Community members reported increasingly strange occurrences near the logging site Rachel had regularly frequented for her research, including unexplained mechanical noises during nighttime hours and suspicious temporary power outages affecting nearby residents. Several reliable locals spoke of repeatedly seeing unknown individuals lurking around the town's edge during the tense weeks immediately surrounding her disappearance. The investigation scope expanded far beyond Willow Creek's boundaries, eventually involving federal agencies specifically concerned with environmental crimes and potential corporate cover-ups of illegal dumping activities. Social media discussion intensified dramatically, with elaborate theories ranging from systematic corporate conspiracies to dangerous eco-terrorism connected to Rachel's environmental activism. True crime podcasters began dedicating entire episodes to the complex mystery, conducting extensive interviews with friends, university professors, and environmental experts familiar with Rachel's work. Her name gradually became synonymous with the often dangerous struggle to protect natural environments, and the tragically high price some individuals pay for having the courage to expose corporate wrongdoing. Harold's eventual trial brought deeply disturbing details to light that shocked even seasoned court observers and legal professionals. Detailed courtroom testimony painted a comprehensive picture of a man systematically consumed by dangerous jealousy and overwhelming fear that Rachel's environmental findings would expose his company's illegal practices and completely ruin his profitable business interests. Concrete evidence demonstrated that Harold had been methodically tracking Rachel's daily movements for weeks and had likely confronted her at the remote campsite where her personal belongings were ultimately discovered. Despite never confessing to the actual crime, Harold's conviction was secured through overwhelming DNA evidence, comprehensive forensic analysis of the crime scene, and multiple credible witness statements linking him directly to the area during the time of Rachel's disappearance. After lengthy deliberations reflecting the case's legal complexity, the jury found him guilty of second-degree murder. Rachel's lasting legacy extended far beyond the courtroom proceedings and legal resolution. Community initiatives promoting strict environmental protections were sparked directly by her important research findings. Local educational institutions introduced comprehensive programs emphasizing the moral courage required to speak truth to power, even when facing potentially dangerous opposition from powerful interests. In the conviction's aftermath, Willow Creek worked tirelessly to rebuild community trust and foster collective healing. Comprehensive outreach programs were established to support residents struggling with grief and trauma, focusing specifically on resilience and prevention of future tragedies. Her family established a permanent foundation in Rachel's name, dedicated to funding scholarships for students committed to environmental science and fearless public advocacy. Rachel's inspiring legacy continues influencing not only those who knew her personally, but countless others who follow her story through media coverage and academic programs nationwide. Yet through profound grief and devastating loss, Willow Creek ultimately discovered a new form of collective resilience. Uniting in their commitment to honor Rachel's memory by protecting both vulnerable youth and pristine wilderness areas for future generations. Let's move to our third story. And this one begins in the shadow of California's Golden Hills, where a tech executive's perfect life crumbled under the weight of a deadly obsession. In the affluent suburb of Mountain View, where million-dollar homes dotted manicured streets and success stories were as common as morning coffee, 34-year-old Hazel lived what appeared to be an enviable life. A rising star in Silicon Valley's competitive tech world, she had everything society told her to want. A prestigious job at a major software company, a beautiful home with panoramic views, and a marriage to Henry, a fellow executive who seemed to adore her. Yet beneath this glossy exterior lurked a darkness that would ultimately consume them both. Hazel had built her career through relentless dedication and brilliant strategic thinking. Colleagues described her as driven but fair, someone who could navigate boardroom politics while maintaining genuine relationships with her team. Her ascent from junior programmer to vice president of product development had taken 12 years of 80-hour weeks and countless sacrifices. She was particularly proud of a revolutionary app she'd conceptualized that helped small businesses manage their finances more efficiently, earning her company millions and cementing her reputation as an innovator. Henry appeared to be her perfect match. 6 years older, he worked as a senior director at a competing firm, and their relationship had blossomed from mutual professional respect into what friends described as genuine love. They met at an industry conference in 2019, bonded over shared ambitions, and married 18 months later in an elegant ceremony that made the local society pages. Henry's charm and Hazel's warmth made them a popular couple in their social circle, frequently hosting dinner parties and charity fundraisers at their stunning home. However, as Hazel's career continued its upward trajectory, subtle cracks began appearing in their marriage. Henry's own career had plateaued, and his company had passed him over for several promotions that he felt he deserved. Friends noticed his increasing bitterness about being introduced as Hazel's husband, rather than recognized for his own achievements. He began making cutting comments about successful women who neglected their families for corporate ladder climbing, remarks that struck those who knew them as oddly personal. The situation deteriorated dramatically when Hazel received an offer to join a startup as Chief Technology Officer, a position that would not only significantly increase her salary, but also give her equity that could prove incredibly valuable if the company succeeded. Henry's reaction was explosive. Neighbors reported hearing shouting matches that lasted well into the night, followed by eerie silences that somehow felt more disturbing than the arguments themselves. Hazel confided to her sister that Henry had become increasingly controlling, monitoring her phone calls, questioning her about colleagues, and demanding to know her whereabouts at all times. She mentioned that he had started following her to work functions and positioning himself where he could observe her interactions with male colleagues. When she tried to address his behavior, he would alternate between tearful apologies and accusations that she was planning to leave him for someone more successful. The final month of Hazel's life was marked by a series of increasingly desperate attempts by Henry to reassert control over their relationship. He surprised her at the office multiple times, claiming he was just in the neighborhood, despite their workplaces being on opposite sides of the city. He also began sabotaging her professional relationships, sending inappropriate emails from her account, and spreading rumors about her competency among industry contacts. On March 15, 2024, Hazel's assistant became concerned when she failed to appear for a crucial morning meeting with potential investors. This was completely out of character for someone who prided herself on punctuality and reliability. When repeated calls to her cell phone went unanswered, her assistant contacted Henry, who claimed he had left for work earlier and assumed Hazel was already at the office. By mid-afternoon, when Hazel still hadn't been reached, her assistant drove to the couple's home. She found the front door unlocked, which immediately struck her as wrong since Hazel was meticulous about security. Inside, the house appeared normal, except for Hazel's purse and car keys sitting on the kitchen counter, suggesting she hadn't left as planned. The assistant called 911, and responding officers discovered Hazel's body in the basement, positioned in a way that initially suggested an accidental fall down the stairs. However, the medical examiner quickly determined that her injuries were inconsistent with a simple fall. She had suffered severe blunt force trauma to the head, and defensive wounds on her hands and arms indicated she had fought desperately for her life. Detective Chloe, a veteran investigator with 20 years of experience in violent crimes, took charge of the case. Her initial examination of the scene revealed inconsistencies in Henry's timeline and several pieces of physical evidence that contradicted his version of events. Most significantly, blood spatter analysis showed that Hazel had been attacked in the living room, not the basement, and her body had been moved after death. During his first police interview, Henry maintained that he had left for work at his usual time of 7:30 a.m. and knew nothing about what had happened to his wife. He claimed their marriage was solid and that Hazel had been excited about her career opportunities. However, investigators quickly uncovered evidence that painted a very different picture of their relationship. Forensic examination of their home computers revealed Henry's extensive surveillance of Hazel's digital activities, including installed tracking software on her laptop and attempts to access her work email accounts. More damning was the discovery of internet searches on his computer for topics like how to make a death look accidental and police investigation procedures for domestic violence cases. The couple's phone records told an even darker story. In the weeks leading up to Hazel's murder, Henry had been bombarding her with calls and texts, sometimes sending over 50 messages in a single day. The tone of these communications grew increasingly threatening, with Henry making references to what would happen if Hazel chose her career over their marriage. Bank records revealed that Henry had been secretly liquidating their joint investments and transferring money to accounts Hazel didn't know about. Investigators theorized that he was either planning to flee if his crime was discovered or positioning himself to financially devastate Hazel if she tried to leave him. The breakthrough in the case came when forensic analysts recovered deleted video files from a hidden camera system Henry had installed throughout their home without Hazel's knowledge. The footage from the morning of her death showed Henry confronting Hazel in their living room, escalating from verbal arguments to physical violence within minutes. The trial began 8 months later, drawing significant media attention due to the couple's prominence in the tech industry and the disturbing nature of the evidence. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Nora, painted Henry as a narcissistic individual whose fragile ego couldn't tolerate his wife's success. They methodically presented evidence of his escalating control and surveillance, culminating in the devastating video footage of Hazel's final moments. Henry's defense team attempted to argue temporary insanity, claiming that work stress and marital problems had pushed their client beyond rational thought. They portrayed him as a loving husband who had simply snapped under pressure. However, the extensive evidence of premeditation, including his internet searches and financial manipulations, undermined this defense strategy. Hazel's family provided powerful victim impact statements, describing a woman who had overcome numerous obstacles to achieve success while maintaining her kindness and generosity. Her sister spoke about Hazel's excitement for the future and her hopes of eventually starting a family, dreams that Henry had violently stolen from her. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours before returning a guilty verdict on charges of first-degree murder. Henry was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a decision that brought some measure of closure to Hazel's loved ones while highlighting the devastating consequences of domestic violence in seemingly successful relationships. In the aftermath of the trial, Hazel's family established a foundation in her name focused on supporting women in technology fields and funding domestic violence prevention programs. Her former company honored her memory by completing development of the small business app she had conceptualized, donating all proceeds to organizations that help victims of intimate partner violence. The case became a catalyst for important conversations within the tech industry about recognizing and addressing signs of domestic abuse among high-achieving professionals. Many companies implemented new employee assistance programs and training initiatives designed to help managers identify when workers might be experiencing violence at home. Detective Chloe reflected that Hazel's case demonstrated how domestic violence could lurk behind any facade of success and respectability. She emphasized the importance of taking threats seriously and creating support systems that enable victims to seek help before it's too late. For the Mountain View community, Hazel's murders shattered assumptions about safety and success. Her story serves as a somber reminder that wealth and professional achievement cannot protect against the dangers that emerge when love transforms into possessive obsession. Today, a scholarship in Hazel's name helps young women pursue careers in technology, ensuring that her legacy of innovation and determination continues to inspire others long after her tragic death. Let's move to our fourth story, and this one begins on a quiet evening in small-town America, where a respected community leader harbored dark secrets behind a facade of respectability. In the peaceful suburbs of Millbrook, Connecticut, where tree-lined streets created a picture-perfect neighborhood and families felt secure, a shocking revelation would forever change how residents viewed trust and safety. Dr. Jacob, a prominent physician with over 20 years of service to the community, was hiding serious misconduct that would ultimately shake the foundation of public confidence. For more than 2 decades, Dr. Jacob had been a cornerstone of Millbrook's medical community. His practice occupied a charming Victorian house on Main Street, with a welcoming atmosphere that put patients at ease. Residents from neighboring towns specifically sought his services, knowing him as a physician who showed genuine care for his patients and maintained strong community connections. Behind this carefully maintained professional image, however, lay a pattern of serious ethical violations that would eventually span 15 years and affect numerous families. The investigation that brought these violations to light would reveal systematic misconduct so extensive that federal authorities classified it as one of the most significant cases of professional malfeasance in New England's recent history. The first concerns about Dr. Jacob's conduct emerged in March 2019, when a parent, Sophie, noticed unusual behavioral changes in her daughter Ruby following a medical appointment. Initially dismissing these concerns as typical post-visit anxiety, Sophie grew increasingly worried as her daughter's distress continued for weeks. When Sophie attempted to discuss her concerns with Dr. Jacob, She was met with professional dismissal and suggestions that she might be overreacting. His authoritative response and decades of community standing initially caused Sophie to question her own observations, a response pattern that investigators would later identify as manipulation. However, Sophie's parental instincts prevailed. She consulted with child psychologist Dr. Alice, who specialized in behavioral changes related to traumatic experiences. Dr. Alice's professional assessment revealed concerning patterns that warranted further investigation. Following Dr. Alice's advice, Sophie contacted the Connecticut Department of Children and Families, which initiated a preliminary investigation in May 2019. The case gained momentum when a second family came forward 3 weeks later with similar concerns. Detective Mason of the Millbrook Police Department was assigned to coordinate the investigation. With 15 years of experience in sensitive cases, Mason immediately recognized the significance of multiple families reporting similar incidents involving the same professional. The investigation expanded when Mason implemented community outreach strategies, working with local schools and organizations to educate residents about concerning behaviors and encouraging anyone with similar experiences to come forward. Within 6 months, 12 families had contacted authorities with troubling accounts. A disturbing pattern emerged from these reports. Dr. Jacob had systematically identified vulnerable families, particularly those new to the area or without strong support networks, and exploited his position of medical authority. His misconduct typically occurred during appointments scheduled at times when the office was less staffed, creating opportunities for inappropriate behavior. The investigation took a significant turn in January 2020, when a court-authorized search of Dr. Jacob's premises uncovered digital evidence documenting his violations. Forensic analysis revealed that Jacob had been maintaining detailed records of his misconduct, with evidence dating back to 2005. Technical examination of Jacob's computer equipment revealed sophisticated security measures and evidence of communication with others who shared his interests in exploiting professional positions. This discovery elevated the case to federal level, bringing in the FBI's specialized unit for crimes involving abuse of authority. The background investigation into Dr. Jacob revealed a carefully constructed lifestyle designed to maximize professional credibility while providing access to vulnerable individuals. His extensive volunteer work with youth organizations and charitable donations, initially viewed as community service, were recontextualized as strategic positioning to build trust and identify potential targets. Psychological evaluation by forensic expert Dr. Paisley identified characteristics consistent with antisocial personality disorder. His ability to maintain professional respect while engaging in systematic misconduct demonstrated the calculated nature of his actions and the ongoing threat he represented. Dr. Jacob's arrest in March 2020 sent shockwaves through Millbrook and surrounding communities. The local hospital immediately suspended his privileges, and the state medical board initiated license revocation proceedings. Federal prosecutors, led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Zoe, filed multiple charges, including conspiracy, fraud, and exploitation of professional authority. The complexity of charges reflected both the severity of his actions and prosecutors' determination to ensure public safety. During the trial, which began in September 2021, prosecutors presented evidence from numerous affected families. The testimony painted a devastating picture of betrayed trust and professional authority exploited for personal gain. The prosecution's case was strengthened by expert testimony about the psychological impact of professional misconduct on victims and families. Dr. Alice explained how Jacob's exploitation of medical authority created particularly deep trauma, as patients are conditioned to trust healthcare professionals completely. November 2021. After brief deliberations, the jury found Dr. Jacob guilty on all federal charges. The judge, citing the calculated nature of the crimes and extensive harm caused, sentenced him to 45 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. The case prompted significant changes in medical oversight and protection protocols throughout Connecticut. The state medical board implemented enhanced background check requirements and ongoing monitoring for healthcare professionals. Medical facilities adopted new policies requiring multiple staff presence during examinations. Community healing proved challenging and ongoing. Many families required extensive counseling to address trauma and trust issues. The Millbrook Community Foundation established a support fund, providing resources for recovery services and counseling. The Jacob case became a catalyst for broader discussions about institutional accountability and protection of vulnerable populations. Child advocacy organizations use the case to highlight how predators exploit positions of authority and community respect. For investigators and prosecutors, the case represented both professional success and a sobering reminder that misconduct can hide behind respectable facades. Detective Mason emphasized that the courage of the first families to come forward was essential to exposing the violations and protecting others. Today, Dr. Jacob remains incarcerated, where he will likely spend his remaining years. The building that once housed his practice has been converted into a family counseling center, providing free services to those affected by professional misconduct. The case of Dr. Jacob serves as a powerful reminder that serious misconduct can hide behind masks of respectability and community trust. It underscores the importance of believing concerns when they arise and maintaining robust oversight systems. Most importantly, it demonstrates that justice can prevail when communities refuse to ignore uncomfortable truths and when brave individuals find courage to speak against those who abuse positions of trust and authority. यह वर्जन completely heading free है और voice generation के लिए safe होना चाहिए. सारी sensitive details remove कर दी गई हैं और professional misconduct के general terms use किए गए हैं. Let's move to our fifth story. And this one begins in the quiet town of Crestwood, where beneath the facade of small-town charm, a teacher's disappearance would expose the deadly obsession hiding behind a charming smile. In the rolling hills of Ohio, Crestwood stood as a testament to American small-town values. Tree-lined streets stretched past Victorian homes, where neighbors knew each other by name and children played safely until dusk. This peaceful community had never experienced the kind of darkness that was about to shatter its innocence forever. Olivia taught third grade at Crestwood Elementary, where her classroom walls were covered with student artwork and inspirational quotes. At 30 years old, she had dedicated 8 years to nurturing young minds, earning the love of students and respect of parents throughout the district. Her colleagues described her as the teacher every parent hoped their child would have. Patient, creative, and genuinely caring about each student's success. Outside the classroom, Olivia lived quietly in a charming cottage she rented from an elderly widow. She spent weekends gardening, reading mystery novels, and volunteering at the local animal shelter. Her life seemed perfectly ordinary until Carter arrived in Crestwood 6 months earlier, claiming to be starting a new business venture in town. Carter presented himself as a successful entrepreneur looking to establish a high-end furniture restoration company. Tall and handsome with an easy smile, he quickly became the subject of local gossip among unmarried women. When he began pursuing Olivia with flowers, romantic dinners, and weekend getaways. The community watched their courtship with approval and mild envy. What nobody witnessed were the subtle changes in Olivia's behavior as their relationship progressed. Emma, her closest friend and fellow teacher, noticed that Olivia had stopped joining their weekly coffee meetups. Phone calls went unreturned, and excuses became increasingly common. When pressed, Olivia would deflect with vague mentions of being busy with Carter or needing to focus on their relationship. The red flags began appearing in small but persistent ways. Carter would arrive unexpectedly at the school, claiming to surprise Olivia with lunch, but actually monitoring her interactions with male colleagues. He questioned her about conversations with parents, particularly fathers, and expressed displeasure when she stayed late to help struggling students. Gradually, Olivia's social circle shrank as Carter found reasons to object to various friendships. Mia, the school principal, noticed changes in Olivia's teaching performance. Once animated and energetic in staff meetings, Olivia became quiet and withdrawn. Her lesson plans, previously creative and detailed, became basic and repetitive. Most concerning was her frequent checking of her phone during class, behavior completely unlike the dedicated professional everyone knew. On October 15th, Olivia attended the annual Crestwood Harvest Festival, a community celebration she had never missed since moving to town. Witnesses saw her arrive with Carter, but noted she seemed anxious and kept checking her watch. Several people attempted to engage her in conversation, but Carter consistently interrupted or steered her away from social interactions. The last confirmed sighting of Olivia was at 8:30 p.m., when festival volunteer Grace saw her leaving the event with Carter. Grace later told police that Olivia had appeared upset, possibly crying, as they walked toward Carter's truck in the parking lot. She hadn't thought much of it at the time, assuming it was a minor couple's disagreement. When Olivia failed to appear for work on Monday morning without calling in sick, something she had never done in 8 years of teaching, Mia immediately knew something was wrong. After unsuccessful attempts to reach Olivia by phone, Mia drove to her cottage and discovered her car still in the driveway, but no response to knocking on the door. Sheriff Blake, a 25-year veteran of law enforcement, arrived to find Olivia's home undisturbed but strangely sterile. Personal items were missing: photos, jewelry, and clothing, as if someone had carefully removed traces of her presence. More disturbing was the complete absence of any electronics. Her laptop, tablet, and even phone charger were gone. Blake's investigation quickly focused on Carter when neighbors reported seeing his truck at Olivia's house at unusual hours over the past several weeks. A background check revealed that Carter's real name was different from what he'd told the community, and his business license was fraudulent. More damning was the discovery that Carter had fled similar situations in 2 previous states, leaving behind accusations of stalking and harassment from former girlfriends. The breakthrough came when Blake obtained a search warrant for Carter's rented workshop space outside town. Inside, investigators discovered a disturbing shrine dedicated to Olivia. Hundreds of photographs covered the walls, images clearly taken without her knowledge showing her at school, at home, and in private moments. Detailed journals chronicled Carter's obsession, including plans to remove obstacles to their relationship and fantasies about keeping Olivia safe from the world. Hidden beneath the workshop's floorboards, forensic teams uncovered Olivia's missing belongings, along with zip ties, chloroform, and a detailed map marking remote locations throughout the county. Most chilling was a folder containing forged documents that would have allowed Carter to assume a new identity in another state. Documents with Olivia's forged signature on accompanying paperwork. Dr. Nina, a forensic psychologist brought in to profile Carter, determined he exhibited classic signs of erotomania, a delusional belief that Olivia was in love with him, despite evidence to the contrary. His journal entries revealed escalating paranoia about imagined threats to their relationship and detailed plans for eliminating anyone he perceived as competing for Olivia's attention. Carter was arrested while attempting to flee the state using false identification documents. Found in his possession were Olivia's driver's license and a USB drive containing thousands of secretly recorded conversations from her home and classroom. The recordings revealed the extent of his surveillance and his violent threats against anyone he believed was interfering with his fantasies. During interrogation, Carter initially claimed Olivia had willingly left town with him for a romantic getaway. When presented with evidence of his stalking behavior and the disturbing contents of his workshop, he broke down and confessed to kidnapping Olivia when she attempted to end their relationship. He led police to a remote cabin where Olivia's body was discovered, confirming she had died from injuries sustained during a violent struggle. The trial began 6 months later, drawing national media attention to Crestwood. Prosecutor Ryan presented a methodical case demonstrating Carter's elaborate deception, systematic stalking, and ultimate murder of an innocent woman who had simply tried to build a relationship based on trust. The evidence included security footage showing Carter's suspicious behavior, testimony from previous victims in other states, and expert analysis of his psychological condition. Defense attorney Kate argued that Carter suffered from severe mental illness that impaired his judgment and ability to distinguish reality from fantasy. However, the prosecution countered with evidence showing Carter's calculated planning and ability to maintain his deceptive identity for months, proving he understood the illegal nature of his actions. The most emotional testimony came from Emma, who described watching her friend's gradual isolation and her own failure to recognize the danger Olivia faced. Parents of Olivia's students spoke about the positive impact she had made on their children's lives and their lasting grief at her senseless death. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury found Carter guilty of first-degree murder, kidnapping, and stalking. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without possibility of parole, stating that Carter's crimes represented a betrayal of the trust and openness that defined small communities like Crestwood. Following the trial, Crestwood established the Olivia Memorial Foundation, dedicated to educating communities about recognizing the warning signs of domestic violence and stalking behavior. The foundation provides training for law enforcement, teachers, and community members on identifying patterns of controlling behavior before they escalate to violence. Sheriff Blake worked with state legislators to strengthen background check requirements for business licenses and create databases for tracking individuals with histories of stalking across state lines. These changes, known as Olivia's Law, have since been adopted by multiple states as a model for protecting potential victims. The cottage where Olivia lived was transformed into a resource center for victims of domestic violence, providing counseling services, legal assistance, and emergency shelter. The garden she had lovingly tended became a memorial space where community members continue to plant flowers in her memory. Today, visitors to Crestwood can see the impact of Olivia's legacy throughout the town. The elementary school established an annual award in her name for teachers who demonstrate exceptional dedication to their students. The Harvest Festival now includes educational booths about domestic violence prevention, ensuring that the community never forgets the lessons learned from their tragic loss. Carter remains incarcerated at the state penitentiary, where he continues to maintain that his actions were motivated by love rather than obsession. His appeals have been consistently denied, ensuring he will spend the remainder of his life imprisoned for his crimes against Olivia and the community that trusted him. Sheriff Blake often speaks to law enforcement groups about the case, emphasizing that domestic violence and stalking can occur in any community, regardless of size or perceived safety. He stresses the importance of taking reports of controlling behavior seriously and maintaining vigilance for signs that situations are escalating toward violence. The story of Olivia serves as both a tragic reminder of the dangers faced by victims of stalking and an inspiration for communities to protect their most vulnerable members. Her memory lives on through the lives of students she taught, the foundation that bears her name, and the strengthened laws designed to prevent similar tragedies. In Crestwood today, residents are more aware of the warning signs of dangerous relationships and more willing to intervene when someone appears to be in distress. While they will never forget the darkness that once invaded their peaceful community, they have chosen to honor Olivia's memory by creating light from the shadows she left behind. Let's move to our sixth story. And this one begins in the rolling hills of Pennsylvania, where a beloved teacher's trust in love would lead to a nightmare that would shake a small community to its very core. In the heart of Pennsylvania's countryside, the town of Maple Hollow stood as a testament to American small-town values. Tree-lined streets wound past colonial homes where neighbors knew each other by name, and Friday night football games brought the entire community together under autumn stars. With a population of just over 8,000, Maple Hollow prided itself on being the kind of place where children could play safely until dark and doors rarely needed to be locked. But beneath this idyllic facade, a darkness was quietly taking root that would challenge everything residents believed about trust, love, and the monsters that can hide behind charming smiles. Alana was 29 years old and had dedicated 7 years of her life to teaching English literature at Maple Hollow High School. Her classroom was a sanctuary of learning where students felt genuinely heard and encouraged to explore their creativity through writing and discussion. Parents throughout the district specifically requested that their children be placed in her classes, knowing that Alana possessed that rare combination of academic rigor and genuine compassion that transforms young lives. Beyond her professional dedication, Alana volunteered at the local animal shelter, organized community book drives, and could be found every Saturday morning helping serve breakfast at the Methodist Church's community outreach program. Alana's personal life had been relatively quiet until Axel arrived in Maple Hollow 6 months earlier, claiming to be establishing a new marketing consulting business in the region. Tall and handsome with an easy confidence, Axel quickly became the subject of local speculation among the town's unmarried women. When he began pursuing Alana with elaborate romantic gestures, surprise lunch deliveries to the school, weekend trips to Philadelphia museums, and flowers delivered to her classroom, the community watched their courtship with approval and perhaps a touch of envy. What the community didn't witness were the subtle but alarming changes that began occurring in Alana's behavior as their relationship deepened. Brielle, her closest friend since college and a fellow teacher at the elementary school, was the first to notice that Alana had stopped joining their traditional Thursday evening coffee meetups. Phone calls went unreturned. Weekend plans were canceled with vague excuses about spending time with Axel, and Alana's normally vibrant personality seemed muted and anxious. The warning signs became more apparent as autumn progressed. Axel would arrive unexpectedly at the school, claiming to surprise Alana with lunch, but actually monitoring her interactions with male colleagues and expressing displeasure when she stayed late to provide extra help to struggling students. He questioned her about parent conferences, particularly those involving single fathers, and gradually succeeded in isolating her from the social connections that had once sustained her. Friends noticed that Alana had stopped wearing certain outfits, explaining that Axel preferred her in more conservative clothing, and she had begun declining invitations to gatherings he couldn't attend. Remy, the school guidance counselor, observed changes in Alana's teaching performance that concerned her deeply. The once animated educator who had brought literature to life through passionate discussions had become withdrawn and distracted. Her lesson plans, previously creative and detailed, became repetitive and basic. Most troubling was Alana's constant checking of her phone during class, a Maybuscout's behavior completely unlike the dedicated professional everyone knew. When Remy attempted to address these concerns privately, Alana deflected with nervous laughter and claims that she was simply adjusting to being in a serious relationship. The situation escalated dramatically during Maple Hollow's annual Harvest Festival on October 26th. A beloved community tradition that Alana had never missed since moving to town. Witnesses saw her arrive with Axel, but noted that she appeared anxious and kept glancing at her watch throughout the evening. Several longtime residents attempted to engage her in conversation about the upcoming school play she had been directing, but Axel consistently interrupted or guided her away from these interactions. The last confirmed sighting of Alana was at 9:15 p.m. when festival volunteer Sage saw her dancing with Axel under the decorated pavilion, though Sage later told investigators that Alana appeared to be crying during the slow dance. When Alana failed to appear for her first period class the following Monday morning without calling in sick, something she had never done in 7 years of teaching, Principal Valerie immediately knew something was catastrophically wrong. After unsuccessful attempts to reach Alana by phone, Valerie drove to her small rental cottage on Elm Street and discovered her car still in the driveway, but no response to persistent knocking. The spare key Alana had given Valerie revealed a house that appeared normal but strangely sterile, as if someone had carefully removed personal touches and evidence of daily life. Sheriff Aaron, a 30-year veteran of law enforcement who had watched Maple Hollow grow from a farming community into a suburban enclave, arrived to find disturbing signs that Alana had not left voluntarily. Her purse, containing identification and credit cards, sat untouched on the kitchen counter. Her classroom keys were missing, but her car keys remained on the hallway table. Most concerning was the complete absence of her laptop, tablet, and cell phone charger, items she used daily for lesson planning and communication with students and parents. Aaron's investigation quickly focused on Axel when neighbors reported seeing his distinctive silver SUV at Alana's cottage at unusual hours over the past several weeks, often late at night or very early in the morning. A background check revealed that Axel had provided false information about his business credentials and had fled similar situations in 2 previous states, leaving behind restraining orders and harassment charges from former girlfriends who described identical patterns of charming pursuit followed by controlling and ultimately threatening behavior. The crucial breakthrough came when Aaron obtained a search warrant for Axel's rented office space in the town's small business district. Inside, investigators discovered a disturbing shrine dedicated to Alana that covered an entire wall. Hundreds of photographs showed her at school, at home, and in private moments. Images clearly taken without her knowledge from concealed positions. Detailed journals chronicled Axel's obsession with Alana, including specific plans to eliminate obstacles to their relationship and increasingly violent fantasies about controlling every aspect of her life. Hidden beneath loose floorboards in the office basement, forensic teams uncovered Alana's missing electronics, along with zip ties, chloroform, and detailed maps marking remote locations throughout the county where bodies might never be discovered. Most chilling was a folder containing forged identification documents that would have allowed Axel to disappear and assume a new identity in another state. Documents that included forged paperwork bearing Elena's signature that would have made her disappearance appear voluntary. Dr. Halley, a forensic psychologist brought in to create a psychological profile of Axel, determined that he exhibited classic signs of erotomania combined with antisocial personality disorder. His journal entries revealed escalating paranoia about imagined rivals for Alana's affection and detailed plans for eliminating anyone he perceived as threatening his fantasy relationship. The writings made clear that Axel had never viewed Alana as a separate person with her own agency, but rather as an object to be possessed and controlled completely. Axel was arrested while attempting to flee to Canada using the forged identification documents. Found in his possession were Alana's driver's license, house keys, and a USB drive containing hours of secretly recorded audio from her home and classroom. The recordings provided disturbing evidence of the extent of his surveillance and his increasingly violent threats against colleagues and friends he viewed as competing for Alana's attention. During intensive interrogation by Aaron and state investigators, Axel initially attempted to claim that Alana had willingly accompanied him on a romantic getaway to start a new life together. When confronted with the overwhelming evidence of his stalking behavior and the disturbing contents of his office shrine, he eventually broke down, confessed to killing Alana when she had definitively ended their relationship, and threatened to seek a restraining order against him. Axel led investigators to a remote cabin deep in the state forest, where Alana's body was discovered, confirming that she had died from strangulation during a violent struggle when she had fought against his attempts to kidnap her. The forensic evidence supported his confession while revealing additional details about the calculated nature of his crime and his attempts to destroy evidence of his actions. The trial began 8 months later, drawing regional media attention to Maple Hollow and focusing national spotlight on issues of domestic violence and stalking in small communities. Lead prosecutor Renly methodically presented evidence of Axel's elaborate deception, systematic surveillance, and ultimately the premeditated murder of a woman whose only crime had been trying to build a trusting relationship with someone she believed cared about her well-being. Defense attorney Theo argued that Axel suffered from severe mental illness that impaired his judgment and ability to distinguish fantasy from reality. However, the prosecution successfully countered with evidence of Axel's careful planning, his ability to maintain false identities for extended periods, and his clear understanding of the illegal nature of his actions, as demonstrated by his elaborate attempts to avoid detection and his preparation for fleeing when discovered. The most emotionally devastating testimony came from Brielle, who described watching her best friend's gradual isolation and her own failure to intervene more aggressively when she sensed Alana was in danger. Students from Alana's classes provided heart-wrenching accounts of how her teaching had inspired them to pursue higher education and creative expression. Parents spoke about the positive impact Alana had made on their children's lives and the lasting hole her senseless death had left in the community's heart. After 4 days of deliberation, the jury returned a unanimous verdict of guilty on charges of first-degree murder, kidnapping, and stalking. The judge sentenced Axel to life in prison without the possibility of parole, stating that his crimes represented not just the taking of an innocent life, but a fundamental violation of the trust and openness that defined communities like Maple Hollow. In the aftermath of the trial, Maple Hollow established the Alana Memorial Foundation, dedicated to educating communities about recognizing early warning signs of domestic violence and providing resources for victims of stalking and coercive control. The foundation provides training for educators, law enforcement, and community members on identifying patterns of controlling behavior before they escalate to violence, with particular emphasis on supporting victims who may be isolated from their support networks. Sheriff Aaron worked with state legislators to strengthen laws regarding stalking across state lines and to create better systems for sharing information about individuals with histories of harassment and domestic violence. These changes, known collectively as Alana's Law, have since been adopted as a model by other states seeking to protect potential victims from predators who move between jurisdictions to escape consequences for their behavior. Alana's cottage was transformed into a resource center, providing counseling services, legal assistance, and emergency shelter for victims of domestic violence throughout the county. The small garden she had lovingly tended behind the house became a memorial space where community members continue to plant flowers each spring in her memory, creating a living tribute to her nurturing spirit. Today, visitors to Maple Hollow can see the lasting impact of Alana's legacy throughout the community. The high school established an annual Teaching Excellence Award in her name, recognizing educators who demonstrate exceptional dedication to student welfare and academic achievement. The Harvest Festival now includes educational booths about domestic violence prevention and healthy relationships, ensuring that Alana's tragic death serves as a catalyst for protecting others who might find themselves in similar dangerous situations. Axel remains incarcerated at the State Correctional Facility, where he continues to maintain that his actions were motivated by love rather than obsession and control. His appeals have been consistently denied, ensuring that he will spend the remainder of his life imprisoned for his crimes against Alana and the community that had welcomed him with trust and openness. Sheriff Aaron frequently speaks to law enforcement conferences about the Alana case, emphasizing that domestic violence and stalking can occur in any community regardless of size or perceived safety. He stresses the critical importance of taking reports of controlling behavior seriously, maintaining vigilance for signs that situations are escalating toward violence, and creating community networks that make it difficult for predators to isolate their victims from sources of help and support. The story of Alana serves as both a tragic reminder of the vulnerability faced by victims of stalking and intimate partner violence, and an inspiration for communities to actively protect their most vulnerable members. Her memory continues to live through the lives of students she taught, the foundation that bears her name, and the strengthened laws designed to prevent similar tragedies from destroying other families and communities. In Maple Hollow today, residents are more aware of the warning signs of dangerous relationships and more willing to intervene when someone appears to be experiencing isolation or control. While they will never forget the darkness that once invaded their peaceful community, they have chosen to honor Alana's memory by creating systems of support and protection that ensure her death was not in vain, and that her legacy of nurturing and caring for others continues to guide their efforts to build a safer, more vigilant community for all. Thanks for watching Crime Ciphers. Another mystery solved, but countless secrets remain. Subscribe and hit the bell to join our journey through darkness and deception. Share your theories in the comments below. Your insights help crack the code. Stay vigilant, stay curious, and remember, justice never sleeps. Until next time, keep decoding the truth with Crime Ciphers. See you soon.